Picture this. It's 1:45 in the morning on March 11th, 2012. The temperature has dropped into the teens. Snow covers the ground in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. A lone figure walks along State Route 3, a dark, winding highway that cuts through the dense forest. No streetlights, no sidewalks, just asphalt, snow, and shadows. A passing motorist spots him, a young man in jeans and a t-shirt, walking against traffic in the bitter cold. The driver is concerned enough to call the police. 40 minutes later, a state trooper arrives to check on the pedestrian, but there's no one there. The young man has simply vanished. His name was Colin Gillis. He was 18 years old, a pre-med student with his whole life ahead of him. And in those 40 minutes, he disappeared so completely that despite 600 volunteers, helicopters, dive teams, and 13 years of investigation, no one has ever found him. Welcome to another episode of the Common Historian podcast. I'm Jeremy, and today we travel to a place that hits close to home for me, literally. Just an hour and a half from where I live sits the small town of Tupper Lake, New York. Population 5,900, nestled deep in the Adirondack Mountains. I have rode through this area countless times. I know these roads, these communities, the way small North Country towns look out for each other. That's what makes Colin Gillis's disappearance so personal, so haunting. This isn't some distant mystery. It happened in my backyard. Tupper Lake is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where high school football games are community events, where families like the Gillises have deep roots, stretching back generations. Colin's grandmother started Gillis's realty. His grandfather served on the town board. His parents, John and Patricia, ran a successful carpentry business. The Gillises weren't just residents of Tupper Lake. They were woven into the very fabric of the community. And Colin was their golden boy. Born on March 4th, 1994, Colin Walter Gillis was everything parents dream of in a son. 6 foot tall, with blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. He was a natural athlete who played both basketball and football at Tupper Lake High School. But Colin wasn't just about sports. He was whip smart, graduating in 2011 with plans that would make any parent proud. Pre-med at SUNY Brockport, his goal, medical school, then becoming a doctor. Those who knew him said it wasn't a matter of if Colin would achieve his dreams, but when. So when Colin came home from spring break in March 2012, his parents were thrilled. Their freshman son, who'd have been away at college for months, was finally back in Tupper Lake. He was so excited too, constantly talking about seeing his high school friends again, joking that it would be like a reunion, even though they'd only graduated 10 months earlier. March 10th, 2012 started like any other perfect family evening. Colin spent the day with his parents, catching up, sharing stories from college. That night, they had dinner together and settled in to watch a college basketball game on TV. Colin was in an amazing mood, laughing, joking around, full of energy about seeing his friends later that night. His father, John, would later tell reporters that Colin was all pumped up about seeing his friends and that they were just kind of laughing and having a good time, like usual with Colin. Around 8:30 p.m., Colin headed out. He was wearing a white American Eagle V-neck t-shirt with black stripes. Just a short-sleeved shirt despite the cold March weather. Blue Levi jeans, red high-top Nike sneakers. He carried an orange LL Bean backpack that contained a reversible black and red winter coat. The plan was simple: meet up with friends, have some fun, be home later. It was the last time his parents would ever see him. Colin's first stop that Saturday night was Country Club Road, where he met up with some friends. Nothing unusual there, just a group of college kids home for spring break, excited to be back together. But then someone mentioned a party, not just any party, a 21st birthday celebration happening about 5 miles away on Pashkun, Pashamgu Road. Now, here's where things get interesting. Colin and his 9 friends weren't actually invited to this party. They didn't normally hang out with the crowd that was throwing it. But in a town of 5,900 people, there are no strangers. They knew some people who'd be there, and word had gotten around that there would be plenty of alcohol. So they made a spare of the moment decision. Let's go. Pas- Pascagoula Road sits on the western side of Tupper Lake, a winding rural road with no sidewalks, no street lights. Houses are set back from the road, hidden behind trees, some more than 100 feet off the pavement. During the day, it's picturesque. At night, it's isolated, dark, the kind of place where you really don't want to be walking alone. The party was at a private residence, celebrating the 21st birthday of one of the homeowner's relatives. Over 40 people showed up that night, including several other young people home from college for spring break. For a while, everything seemed fine. Colin and his friends were having a good time, drinking, catching up with people they hadn't seen in months. It felt like a reunion Colin had been so excited about. But then something went wrong. According to Austin O'Neill, a friend who was there that night, an argument broke out that escalated into a large fight. Not just words, actual brawling. Teenagers fighting with each other at a party descends into chaos. Austin and other friends urged Colin to leave them a- as the situation deteriorated, leave with them as the situation deteriorated. But Colin refused. He stayed behind as his friends fled the violence. Why? We may never know. Was Colin involved in the original argument? Did he feel responsible? Was he trying to be a peacemaker? Or was he just too stubborn to back down? What we do know is that eventually Colin left the party alone. And before he started walking, he tried to contact friends by phone. At 1 a.m. on March 11th, Colin walked out of the party on foot. His friends were gone. They left when the fighting started. He didn't wait for anyone. He didn't arrange a ride, but he did try to get help. Colin's parents later reviewed his phone records and listened to a voicemail messages he left that night. The messages were coherent. Colin wasn't slurring his words or sounding confused. He was trying to reach a friend who lived west of Tupper Lake. possibly hoping for a ride, but no one answered. So Colin just started walking. But here's what makes no sense. Colin didn't head towards home. His parents' home was to the east, back towards the center of Tupper Lake. Instead, Colin walked north, up Pascagoula Road, up a steep, winding incline into the dark until he reached State Route 3. And then he turned left, west towards the town of Piercefield, away from home, away from help, into the wilderness. Maybe he was still trying to reach that friend who lived west of town. Maybe he thought he could walk there, or maybe in the cold and confusion of that night, he simply made the wrong turn. State Route 3 is not a road you want to walk at night. It's a major highway that cuts through the Adirondack Mountains, connecting small towns separated by miles of dense forest. No streetlights, no sidewalks, just two lanes of asphalt with wilderness on both sides. On March 11th, 2012, the temperature had dropped into the teens. There was snow on the ground, and Colin Gillis, wearing just jeans and a short sleeve shirt, was walking alone along this highway in the dark. The first person to see him was Austin Tuhey, another young man from the area. Austin spotted Colin near the intersection where Pascagoula Road met Route 3. When he approached Colin and asked what he was doing, Colin gave a puzzling answer. He was waiting for a friend to pick him up. But here's the problem. There was no record of Colin arranging a ride with anyone. No phone calls, no text messages. No one ever came forward to say they were supposed to pick up Colin that night. So why did he tell Austin that he was waiting for someone? Austin left Colin there, standing at the intersection. But th that that was sometime around 1:30 a.m. And that's when our timeline becomes crucial. At 1:45 a.m., just 15 minutes later, another witness spotted Colin. This time it was Rich Rosentreter, editor of the Lake Placid News, who was driving back from Messina to Tupper Lake with his mother. Rosentreter's account is chilling. He saw a young man walking along Route 3 against traffic, staying close to the white line on the side of the road. The figure was flailing his arms. At first, it looked like he was trying to hitchhike, but then it seemed like he wasn't. What Rosentreter saw was even more disturbing. Colin appeared to be stumbling erratically along the highway. This wasn't just someone walking purposefully down a road. This was someone in distress. Rosentreter was concerned enough about his lone pedestrian in the middle of nowhere, but also fearful of stopping on the dark, unlit road with his elderly mother in the car, that he drove to the local police station to report what he'd seen. The time was around 2 a.m. Here's what happened next. It took 30 to 60 minutes for authorities to respond to the call. A New York State trooper finally arrived in the area to look for the pedestrian that had been reported. But when the trooper searched the area, there was no one there. Colin Gillis had vanished. When Colin doesn't come home Sunday morning, his parents weren't immediately worried. It wasn't uncommon for him to stay out late with friends, maybe crash at someone's house. His phone battery often died, leaving him unreachable. But as Sunday afternoon wore on, with no word from Colin, concern turned to worry. John and Patricia started calling his friends. No one had seen him since the party. By 5:30 p.m. on March 11th, Colin's parents called police to report him missing. What happened next was extraordinary. This wasn't just any missing person case. This was Colin Gillis, the beloved son of a well-known family in a tight-knit community. Within hours, Tupper Lake mobilized like it was at war. Monday morning brought an army of searchers, New York State Police, state forest rangers, the Department of Environmental Conservation, Tupper Lake Police and fire departments, the Piercefield Fire Department, Search and Rescue of Northern Adirondacks, and volunteers, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. Mike DeMars, who helped coordinate the search, estimated that upwards of 600 people showed up to look for Colin. 600 people in a town of 5,900. That that's one in every 10 residents dropped everything to search for a missing teenager. They combed the roads, the railroad tracks, the dense Adirondack wilderness. Dive teams searched the Raquette River, which winds through the area where Colin was last seen. Helicopters from the U.S. Army at Fort Drum joined state police helicopters in aerial searches. They had everything: ground teams, water teams, air support, high-tech sonar equipment, military helicopters from Drum. More than 1,000 volunteers combed the area. Everything except the one thing they needed most, Colin. But they did find something. Searchers discovered some of Colin's personal belongings near the setting pole dam area, close to where he'd last been seen on Route 3. His driver's license was among the items found. So was a tobacco pipe. But that was it. No other trace. No footprints in the snow leading away from the road. And there was waist-deep snow covering the forest that March. No signs of a struggle. No indication of where Colin might have gone after dropping these items. The search was remarkably intensive, one of the most comprehensive ever mounted in the region. But after a week, with no new leads or discoveries, the efforts were scaled back. It was as if Colin had simply stepped off the face of the earth. In 13 years, it's in the 13 years since Colin Gillis has disappeared, investigators have pursued nearly 500 leads. 500 tips that came from across the country, Nevada, Mexico, everywhere. But still, no Colin. So what happened to him during that crucial 40 minutes between when he was last seen and when police arrived? The witness account of Collins stumbling erratically along Route 3 suggests that he may have been impaired more than initially thought. He had been drinking at the party, was underdressed for the temperatures in the teens, and was walking in waist-deep snow conditions. But here's what's puzzling. Collins' voicemail messages that night were coherent. His parents listened to them. He wasn't slurring his words or sounding confused. So if he was stumbling, was it from alcohol, exhaustion, cold, or something else entirely? Is it possible he became increasingly disoriented as hypothermia set in? wandering off the road into the dense forest and succumbed to the elements. The Adirondacks are vast and unforgiving. As state police investigator Jeremy Vile put it, the Adirondacks is a huge place, and the possibility of someone being lost there is not unheard of. There are waterways throughout the area. Colin could have fallen through the ice or into the fast-moving Racket River. Despite the most intensive searches ever mounted in the region, over 1,000 volunteers, military, hospital, helicopters, waist-deep snow that should have shown footprints, a body could still remain hidden in such terrain. The new details about the party paint a darker picture. This wasn't just an argument, it was brawling, with teenagers physically fighting. Colin's friends fled the violence, but Colin stayed behind. Why? Was Colin involved in the original fight? Did someone at the party have a serious grudge against him? When Colin finally left alone, was he followed? What if someone from the party caught up with him during that 30 to 60-minute window before police arrived? The problem remains the same. Multiple witnesses saw Colin walking alone, and there was no signs of struggle along the snowy road. Here's where a few new information changes everything. Colin was trying to reach a friend who lived west of Tupper Lake, exactly the direction he was walking. His voicemails were coherent, purposeful attempts to get help. Maybe Colin wasn't wandering aimlessly. Maybe he had a specific destination in mind. He might have been walking towards that friend's house, thinking he could make it on foot when no one answered his calls. This makes his westward direction suddenly logical rather than mysterious. But it also raises new questions. How far west did this friend live? Was it a reasonable walking distance, or was Colin's judgment impaired by alcohol and cold? The most chilling possibility remains that someone picked Colin up during that crucial window. Not someone he knew, someone random, a predator cruising the highway in the early morning hours who saw a young man stumbling alone and saw an opportunity. The fact that Colin was seen stumbling erratically might have made him appear even more vulnerable to someone with bad intentions. His driver's license and tobacco pipe being found near the road could have been dropped during a struggle or abduction. This would explain why he vanished so completely and why, despite being one of the only 9 people to disappear without a trace in the Adirondacks since 1971, Colin has never been found. For 8 years, the Colin Gillis case seemed frozen in time. Periodic searches, occasional tips, but no major breakthroughs until November 2020. Residents of Edwards, New York, a small community in St. Lawrence County, about 50 miles from where Colin disappeared, noticed something unusual. New York State police vehicles, heavy equipment, and digging. Lots of digging. The location was known locally as the Old Noble Farm, a property off County Route 24, where a house had burned down a couple of years earlier. State police were using the town's backhoes to excavate a 20 to 30-foot circle on the property. When reporters pressed for information, state police were tight-lipped. All they would say was that they were following up on a tip on an older case. But then, on November 11th, 2020, they confirmed what everyone suspected. The dig was connected to the Colin Gillis investigation. State Police Public Information Office Trooper Jennifer Fleshman released a brief statement. We were following up on a lead in Edwards on the Gillis case. No arrests have been made. We were following up on an older lead. An older lead. That suggests that this wasn't new information. It was something that had been sitting in a case file for years, something that investigators had finally decided to act on. But what was the connection between Colin Gillis and a farm 50 miles away from where he disappeared? Had someone come forward with information about the property? Had new technology allowed investigators to analyze old evidence in a new way? The authorities won't say. The dig concluded after several days. No arrests were made. No additional information was released. To this day, we don't know what prompted that excavation or what, if anything, investigators found. But for the people of Tupper Lake, it was the most significant development in the case in 8 years. A sign that somewhere out there, someone knows something about what happened to Colin Gillis. Drive through Tupper Lake today, and you'll still see them, missing person flyers with Colin's picture. Now age progressed to show what he might look like at 31 years old. They're posted at the Primary Eye Care, Main Street Restaurant, Stewart's Shop, Swiss Kitchen, the local laundromat. Constant reminder of the young man who never came home. For nearly a year and a half after Colin's disappearance, visitors driving through the town were met with a large roadside billboard featuring Colin's face and offering $25,000 reward. But the constant reminder became too painful for the family. As Colin's mother, Patty, told New York Times, it's a poor substitution for Colin. I don't want to drive by and see that. I want to see Colin right here. The larger billboards were eventually taken down, though smaller posters remained throughout the community. The case took a toll on the family in unexpected ways. Business at their woodworking shop dwindled as customers became uncomfortable with the family situation, unsure how to respond to their tragedy. Colin's older brother, Lyndon, now in his early 30s, still finds it painful to see his brother's face on the missing posters around town. To avoid the uncomfortable conversations, he drives to Saranac Lake to buy groceries rather than shop locally. Every single meeting at the Tupper Lake Village Board of Trustees begins the same way, with a moment of silence for the safe return of Colin Gillis and for his family. They've been doing this for 13 years. 13 years of hope, grief, and determination not to let Colin be forgotten. Mayor Paul Marone, who has led these moments of silence since the day Colin disappeared, explained why. I think it makes us all remember him and his family and hope that someday in the very near future that either there's a break in the case or we find Colin alive or his body is discovered so that closure can happen for the Gillis family. The Gillis family has offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to Colin's location. But more than money, they want answers. They want to know what happened to their son during that 40 minutes that changed everything. Former state police Troop B commander Major John Tibbetts Jr. wor- worked law enforcement in the North Country for 13 years. He investigated murders, accidents, and all manners of crimes and tragedies. But Colin Gillis was different. Tibbetts kept Colin's picture on his desk throughout his career. He said that out of all the cases he'd worked, Colin's disappearance bothered him the most. Bob Russo, an investigator at the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, who has worked on Colin's case, put it bluntly, we haven't generated any leads at all. It's like he dropped off the face of the earth. Colin is one of only 9 people that has been reported missing and never found in the Adirondack Park since the Department of Environmental Conservation began officially keeping track of disappearances in 1971. 9 people in over 50 years in a park that sprawls 90,375 square miles, almost the size of Lake Erie, because it makes no sense. An 18-year-old doesn't just vanish from a highway, not without a trace, not for 13 years. Someone, somewhere, knows what happened to Colin Gillis. As I researched this case, I kept coming back to one detail that haunts me. And maybe it's because this happened so close to home, but it feels personal. Collins told Austin Tuhey that he was waiting for a friend to pick him up, but no friend was coming. No one ever claimed they were supposed to give Colin a ride that night. So why did he say that? Was he confused, lying, or was he expecting someone? Living just 90 minutes from Tupper Lake, I know I know these roads. I've rode Route 3 in the dark. I understand how isolated it is, how vulnerable someone would be walking alone out there. That's what makes this case so chilling to me. It could have been anyone. It could have been someone I know. Was there a plan we don't know about? A meeting that was supposed to happen? Someone Colin trusted who convinced him to walk towards Piercefield in the middle of the night? These are questions that keep investigators working on this case 13 years later. These are the details that might hold the key to bringing Colin home. And these are the thoughts that go through my mind every time I drive or ride past Copper Lake, knowing that somewhere in this beautiful but unforgiving landscape, answers are waiting to be found. If you have any information about the disappearance of Colin Gillis, please contact the New York State Police at 518-897-2000. Colin's family has never stopped looking for him. His community has never stopped hoping. And somewhere out there, someone has the answers they desperately need. Colin would be 31 years old now. If he's alive, he might have a family of his own, children who don't know their father's real name, a life built on a foundation of mystery. Or maybe Colin never left the Adirondacks. Maybe he's been there all along, waiting to be found in the vast wilderness he knew so well. Until we know for sure, the people of Tupper Lake will keep holding their moments of silence. They'll keep posting his picture. They'll keep hoping that someday, somehow, Colin Gillis will come home. This has been another episode of The Common Historian. I'm Jeremy, and this case happened so close to where I live. It is a reminder that these aren't just stories. These are real people, real families, real communities that have been forever changed by one inex- inexp- inexplainable night. Thank you for listening. And remember, Colin Gillis is still out there somewhere. Someone knows what happened. Someone in my region. Someone who might be listening to this podcast. Someone who drives these same roads as I do. Someone has the answers. Don't let his story be forgotten.